Hi, I'm Eric Linask. We're here at Editor's Day in Santa Clara. With me today is Mike Masiag from Altiscale. Mike, thanks for joining us. Great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
So, you and I were just kind of joking that we really are in everything as a service world, and that includes big data. What exactly is big data as a service?
Yeah. So big data as a service really is operating big data in such a way that customers or end users can simply use the output of big data and do the analysis and not worry about the infrastructure that's underneath of it. So if you think of companies like Salesforce, they were fundamentally, I don't want to have to set up my own CRM system, so I'm going to get rid of a database server, an application server, and a web server. In our particular case, in big data, you're talking about very broad, very complex things to go run. So I'm not running dozens of machines, but I'm running hundreds of machines. I'm running complex open source software like Hadoop and Spark and the like. We do all of that in the cloud, not only provide the hardware and the software on top of it, but as a fully managed service, allowing customers to simply do their analysis on top of it, not have to deal with the problems of how am I going to install it, how am I going to manage it, how am I going to deal with contention between users, job upgrades, and the like. It's a fully managed service for big data.
So they effectively collect the data, and you do all the heavy lifting for them after that.
That's correct. I mean, one of the knocks on big data has been two things, right? There's been an expertise gap.
Yep.
There's an expertise gap as to how do I do the IT infrastructure and the management of the underlying platform,
right,
and then how do I do the data analytics on top of it. That first expertise gap of the underlying platform and keeping it running, we take care of 100% of that.
And the data scientists on the other side, well, that's brought about an entirely new employment category for folks, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it absolutely has. Yes.
So this has certainly been interesting. How did you get into this business? Where did Altiscale come from? And how did you get into this big data as a service line?
Yeah, Altiscale actually goes back to the very beginning of big data. So big data came out of web search. Web search had to do data analytics at a scale that was not possible with existing technology. So Google actually got it going originally with MapReduce and the like. In the meantime, over at Yahoo, they had to solve the same problem, and that's really where Hadoop came from, was from Yahoo. Google published a paper on MapReduce around the same time that Yahoo was trying to go solve this problem, and a number of people were working on this. Our founder, Rami Stata, was in web search at Yahoo and ultimately became their chief technology officer, where they decided to use the paper that Google published as a beginning and ultimately open source the technology that became Hadoop. From that, a couple of companies got spun out. Some of the folks went and created this company called Clara. Some of them created the company, or Yahoo actually spun out Hortonworks. And our founders, Rami Stata and David Chaikin, said, you know what, we want to enable the world to run big data as a service, just as we have here at Yahoo. What they did is they created a 40,000 node, half an exabyte, 1,000 user shared service so that the users at Yahoo, a very technical company, could simply focus on data analysis, not the underlying infrastructure. So that's how Altiscale got going. He said, we're going to do this not as on-premises software, complex, throw over the wall to IT and let it make it happen. We're going to do this as a fully managed service. Just to kind of round the whole thing out, when they went out to go raise money, our first round was financed by Sequoia. Bill Korn, who was the old SVP at Google at the time that they did the work around MapReduce and published the paper, was the first money in the Altiscale. So I like to talk about the fact that when we have a board meeting, the people who were there at the beginning of big data in Hadoop are sitting around the table saying, what's the future look like? So we've got a very good claim to kind of making that happen.
Wow, that's a pretty interesting story.
Yeah.
Where does all the data reside? Do you store the data for your customers?
Correct, yes. So we store it. We're an always-on HDFS plus Yarn cloud. So HDFS is the storage. It's stored in our cloud. And we have cloud presence here in both coasts of the United States, and it's purpose-built for doing data analytics and purpose-built for doing big data. So we solve very specific technical problems like focusing on networking that is often east-west networking, not simply north-south networking like you would get from some other places. And all of the managed service elements of it, like I had mentioned, all the software upgrades, all the hardware upgrades, all the contention between users, et cetera, et cetera. We take care of all of that for our customers.
And who defines, or how do you define what analytics have to be run?
So the analytics, we support or we create a basic analytical platform, right? So anything that runs on top of Yarn runs in our cloud service, and then the customers define what tools that they want to go run on top of that, whether that's MapReduce or Spark, whether they want to cube the data and use something like our partners Altiscale to then show that through something like Tableau. All of that is largely decided by the customers themselves.
So really, it really is just taking the processing power, the processing and handling out of your customers' hands.
The processing and probably more importantly, the management of the software, which is complex, and all of the day-to-day operations of the software.
Without losing any of the flexibility that they would normally have.
That's correct, yeah.
Are there particular industries or verticals that you are taking more advantage, or that are taking advantage more than others?
Certainly, certainly.
Data as a service?
Yeah. Big data was born in the web. So for most companies, it started with web companies, ad tech and search and the like that happens in that area. What we're seeing is a big run toward the general enterprise as well. And this is not really surprising because in two respects. One, big data or Hadoop is replacing technologies in the enterprise data warehouse space that were 50-to-1 advantages of running Hadoop than doing it in the old way in terms of price and performance. It's also enabling a whole new class of applications that can get run because we're dealing with data scales that otherwise weren't previously manageable. But to kind of come back to what industries, when we get in the enterprise, we see a lot of uptake in financial services. We see a lot of uptake in healthcare, and kind of thinking about patient care and dealing with things in that area, and a lot in manufacturing and the Internet of Things.
Interesting. Are there others that you think could benefit or that could be significant users or clients?
Over time, every business is a data business. We've talked about everything being a software business.
Yeah.
Really, at the end of the day, it's all a data business as well. You can start to think about any time I can predict behavior or predict an outcome. Having more data is always better for that, and being able to easily and effectively and inexpensively store and analyze that data is the first step to that.
What do you do to ensure privacy and security of the data? Obviously, those are always concerns. And they're questions that I think customers have to ask.
Yep.
But I get the sense that the industry at large is sort of at a place where you have the right answers. So what are the answers?
Yeah. So there are security and compliance standards that everybody needs to meet, to be serious about this. So we have our SOC 1 and SOC 2 compliance, compliance certificates. We've done our HIPAA compliance. We've done all of the things. We turn on Kerberos by default for all of our customers to kind of make all of those standards happen, in that particular area. But really, the web class companies are also really good at a maniacal focus of security. We think of security like Fort Knox thinks of security. Many IT organizations who are the ones saying, hey, is this going to be secure, think of it the way you and I protect our houses. It's safe, but it's not Fort Knox. We're a Fort Knox class security. And as a result, many enterprises are kind of getting used to the idea that actually the public cloud, if managed properly, is more secure than what they can do on premises.
I've always thought that that's probably the case, or certainly should be the case, because there's, you've got you're hosting either the data or the applications or information from dozens, hundreds, thousands of companies, as opposed to just one.
Yeah,
so that's right. Makes a whole lot of sense. Hey, Mike, thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure.
I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.